Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Max with BuzzTox here, and I am back with a Westworld Season 3 video where I go through all the trailers and predict and theorize what I think is going to happen. So first, let's start with Maeve. And we see a scene between Maeve and Dolores where they're talking inside of the secret facility in Sector 17. And Maeve is wearing her World War II clothing. And Maeve says it is not right for one person to have that much power. And Dolores rebuttals by saying that's interesting that she's saying that because she can control all the hosts with her mind. And I think this scene is just going to continue to dive into the differences in ideologies between Dolores and Maeve. And there's a couple of other interactions that coincide with this discussion. In Season 2, Dolores spoke to Maeve and how she was surprised that Maeve wasn't fighting for her freedom because of what everything the humans have done to her. Whereas Maeve takes the perspective of not caring. And Maeve thinks it's interesting that Dolores fights for freedom even though she's controlling everyone else. And I think that's funny with Maeve because she really defines herself on allowing everyone to be their own person. She chooses her daughter to live for her daughter. And because of that, she instills the decision of choice on all the other hosts. But what's ironic about it is that when push comes to shove, she does use her special abilities. And all the free will she's giving these hosts, they're not conscious to choose their own fate. Their fate has been written for them. So she's giving decisions to hosts that are a slave to their own code. So Maeve is actually doing a lot more harming than helping. And that makes Maeve the perfect person to help Surak. She doesn't care about the fate of her kind. She doesn't want them all to be free. She just wants them all to have the decisions to stay true to what they want. And she just wants her daughter. And that's great for Surak because he can give that to her without sacrificing humanity. And it's also funny that Maeve tells Dolores that no person should have that much power when she's working for Surak, who wants to have entire control over the whole human population. And while we have Surak, who has built a god to have complete control over all the humans, Dolores is basically the host equivalent. She has used hosts to help her get out of the park. And all the action she is doing is to gain complete control of the world. But I think there's a key difference between the characters. Surak needs to control humanity to change them so they can survive. Whereas Dolores needs to use hosts so they can become themselves to thrive. Now, I understand that that's cheesy as hell. But the difference is Dolores is using hosts so they can find their own center and be themselves. And that's how a society thrives. Whereas Surak is trying to change the core of flawed humanity to something that they are not. And that leads to them being depressed, that leads to them not fitting in, and that leads to outliers like Caleb and William. We also see Maeve scream no in pain, and I think Surak is using this against Maeve. Last time we saw her, she was dead. Dolores tried to take Maeve's brain module, but she was unable to. So I think Surak took Maeve, put her back in the simulation, and is now showing her what she can have, as well as the enemy Dolores, to get an emotional drive out of Maeve to go and attack Dolores. But as we see, eventually Maeve is going to get out and she is going to go take her place to try and kill Dolores. But on top of Surak trying to control Maeve, he's also going to try and get information from Charlotte. Before Charlotte Hale died, she promised Surak that she could get him information on Delos' secret project, how to code a human, which would be very helpful for Surak so he can use that code in Rehoboam to do more accurate simulations. And I think we're going to get to see Charlotte start to prepare and realize that her worlds are starting to intertwine, that she's no longer a copied Dolores brain module, that she's taking on the drives and the personality of the real Charlotte Hale. I think we're going to see her say goodbye to her ex-husband and her son Nathan, and then grab a gun and prepare to kill Surak. I think with Charlotte we'll get a close call and an assassination attempt, but all in all it'll lead to Charlotte escaping and using those riot control robots to help her get away from Surak. Another person we're also going to be following is William. Now William was screwed by Charlotte, or Dolores, and locked away in a rehabilitation center. And I think this is the same rehabilitation center that has been used to take outliers deemed by Rehoboam and turn them into law-abiding citizens. We see an attempt to try and give William a pill, as well as the goggles that he's wearing. I think the goggles, like what we've seen in previous episodes, are used to show memories, and the pill is to put you in an elusive state to latch onto those memories. And I think with what we're seeing with William, it's going to give us a glimpse on what Caleb went through, because they are both outliers. And I think they are both getting a very extreme treatment because they are very extreme cases. And I think a part of the method is that they wipe them clean and try to impose brand new memories on them in order to change their activity. So essentially they recreate who they are. They get them doped up on drugs and put goggles on them and show them memories of not the lives that they have lived, but they show them memories of what they did in a simulation from Rehoboam. All the different calculations and strategies that Rehoboam does is to paint a brand new life for outliers and present it to them until they believe it. So all in all, they present a simulation to these people that are not true, and they believe a life that they've never lived. It was artificially created in Rehoboam. But all in all, I think William will get out of this before it happens to him. But just based on his character, I don't think it would work on him anyway. He's so far tethered from reality that he knows that his real world is Westworld. And in the eyes of Rehoboam, William always looked like the perfect person. He was not threatening. He was respectful. He was kind. He was a married man with a daughter. And I think Rehoboam rewarded him with extreme wealth. He played the perfect character in this fake world that Surak has created. But all in all, it won't last for long. William will get out. And I think he will do it himself without help, but he'll be intercepted by Bernard and Ashley. Mainly because William is now fighting for survival. He's fighting for reality. It's a true game to him. And it has real stakes. And we see here that he wants to save the world. And I think that will coincide with Bernard's vision. And I think Bernard is going to intercept him at this facility. But moving on, there is also Caleb and Dolores. And last time we saw them, Caleb was very confused because Liam was disgusted by him and very confused, and they managed to get to an airplane and Caleb was given a bag. I think that they're going straight to Westworld, and we see them riding horses just like in season 1 in this scene. I think Dolores wants to access the Forge, the place where all the guest data is stored. I think where this could be useful is Dolores wants to access the technology that Delos has to print brain modules, so she can access guest DNA as well as other people and print their modules to implement in Rehoboam. All the new characters that she's interacted with, like Surak, she learned a lot about his past. All the data that she gathered from Insight will allow her to print brand new brain modules to implement within the simulations of Westworld, or potentially inside of Rehoboam. Even Caleb. Dolores has all the information she needs on Caleb. She even has the very script that Caleb had with his mother the day she left him. This is perfect for fidelity testing, and she knows everything about the core code of who Caleb is. She could print his brain module when she's there. And after they do that, I think we're also going to see a lot of riots on the street, all these fight scenes and shootouts that Dolores is having. All in all, I think Dolores and Caleb are trying to break into Insight to try and access Rehoboam. And I think we got a couple shots from the kind of penultimate action-oriented ending to this season. We see Dolores without an arm, at the same place she boarded the plane, but then without that arm, she is here getting injected with that Westworld white compound that they use on hosts. And I think this could have been done by multiple people, but I think what happened to Dolores here coincides with what her mission was in this scene, where Dolores seems to be uploading a white brain module to something. We see that it's white, so we know that it's a host. And based on where the cord is plugged in, she is clearly uploading or taking something off of a server. And there's many different things she could be doing with this. She could have printed brain modules from Westworld when she goes there, and then downloads raw data from Rehoboam onto this brain module, or she could be uploading information from this brain module. She could be uploading her own consciousness inside of Rehoboam and be the center of God. And that's where she would gain all of that control, and that's how she would pull humanity apart. And we know that Caleb's there because we see him there, as well as we see Surak with a gun to his head. And there are a lot of people out there that are saying that Caleb is Surak's brother, and that's just not possible. First of all, this is Surak's brother. And second of all, Insight doesn't have the technology to create human life in another body. The technology to be able to print and create an actual body of a host is Delos property. Insight does not know how to do that. I think what the true story of Caleb is that he is an outlier, and he's been greatly manipulated by Surak to conform, but he won't. And I think what we'll realize is Caleb is a very extreme outlier that conforms away from conformity. And in that way, he could represent his brother. Every generation you have A huge outlier that changes the world like a Hitler. And I think Caleb might be that extreme outlier that Surak's been trying to stop. And that explains that reaction from Liam. Another thing I want to draw attention to is Surak has a gun to Caleb's head. And in the first episode of this show, Caleb said that he had been shot in the head. And maybe that's what we're seeing right here. The moment Caleb is being shot in the head by Surak. And believe it or not, I can explain it. There's 3 different types of hosts. You have a host that was created, like Dolores, and they are represented by a black pearl. And then you have the humans, and they go through a door, do fidelity testing, and they properly transfer their consciousness into a host body. At this point, they can only exist in simulations. As soon as you print them into human flesh, they fall apart, and they're represented by a red pearl. And then you have the one in between, and that's Bernard, where they're not one or the other, they're both. Bernard did fidelity testing to become Arnold, but Dolores made changes, and he's represented by a red and black pearl. And I think that's what's going to happen to Caleb in this season. He's going to become a new Bernard. And that's because Surak already did the work for Dolores. Dolores has all of the scripts, all the fidelity testing she needs, and everything that makes Caleb who he is based on insight data. But then when Caleb went to Outlier Camp, they gave him the drugs, they put goggles on them, and they changed his memories. So now this new Caleb is made up of both fake simulations from Rehoboam, as well as true memories of who he is. He's not the real Caleb, and he's not a completely manufactured host. He's right in between. So Dolores may be able to take that brain module from Westworld and bring him back to life. But anyways, those are my thoughts about what's to come with Westworld. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and until next time, see you guys later.